Hello and welcome once again to lovely Pickett, Wisconsin on the 7th or 8th day of May. It's the day after my first attempt at running a comparison of swamp juice fuels. So, and I don't remember what the date is, I seldom ever do. All I know is it's a Thursday, May 2026. Hey, the sun's coming out a little bit. But however, as nice as this day is, it's a little cool again, as you can see by the weather widget things that I post on here. Today is going to be the second attempt to do a comparison between these two versions of swamp juice from Garrett. Now the parameters for today's test are the same as they were yesterday, whereas I've got my Magnum 108 engine, freshly rebuilt bearings, and only had that one kind of two partial little runs yesterday since the bearings had been replaced. I had issues with the carb which have been resolved, we hope. But in the process of actually looking at this carb more closely, now this is a Magnum 108, very much, it's an identical engine to the ASP 108. In fact, I think they're made in the same, they were made in the same factory in China, exact copies of the engine. This carb actually has 91 printed on it, which to me tells me that it was used for both the 91 and 108 engines. But when I was messing with the carb yesterday and today I verified it again, there's a choke installed in this barrel, which means that's a restrictor that has been used at many times in OS engines on their larger carbs, which means that this carb is actually kind of more set up for a 91 as opposed to a 108, because I think you would want to remove that choke for the 108. I did not do that. I've just left it as it is. So I've got an APC 15.6 prop here. I've got a brand new OS G5 glow plug, which I've verified. And I've got a small amount of Swamp Juice version 1. Now this version of Swamp Juice was what was given to me initially by Garrett back in November. Many iterations, he has gone through many iterations of this before coming to this, which is Swamp Juice 2 is what I'm calling it. Two very different mixtures of fuel from what I gather from Garrett. So what he wanted me to do was run this swamp juice, the first version, not like he's ever going to go back and make it again, because this is long gone, it's extinct. But he wants to know if there's a significant or any kind of a difference between this fuel and this fuel. So what I'm going to do here is I think I've got this engine fairly close to tuned, but we're going to have to do it again, and I think I've got enough fuel here to get this tuned up and peaked out, and then I'm going to run this fuel out completely. Whether I show all of that or not, I don't know. I may just edit that out once I get this running, and then I'll put this new swamp juice fuel in here and do another run and readjust carburetor settings if necessary. So that's the plan for today's video. And let's see if things go more according to plan. So I just posted this morning the poor attempt that I had from yesterday on doing this, and one of my buddies, Mike, had commented that maybe to assist in getting this thing started I use the lighter fluid trick. And I was like, that's a great idea, Mike. It is a great idea, except I couldn't find my lighter fluid, either that or I just plain forgot it. So I don't have that. It's cooler temperatures out. I got a funny feeling that starting this thing might be a little challenging, so I'm going to start off by just putting fuel under the glow plug again and just being patient with it and seeing if we can get it to run quickly here. So with all that said, let's just do it. Okay, so I just put fuel in here. I have not actually filled the line up with fuel to prime it, which I am now doing. So in theory, this thing should be ready to pop off. Now I think I've noticed that you don't really want to start this thing with it like really at the idle speed. I think it requires a little bit more. So I'm going to let it just sit there for a second. know, I think I had it a little bit lean there for this. Let's see here, what did it catch? It caught an 85.50 before it shut down, but it should be warm enough to fire right back up. try and set it for just a 3,000 RPM idle. Okay, there we go. Ran out that tank. It's running very well, I would say. Yes, maybe I could lean the low end a little bit more, and in subsequent runs maybe I will, but I didn't want to have to keep starting it if it was too rich and it was going to die. So I just left it as it was. I think that's a good place to leave it. Okay, so this is Swamp Juice 2, and I have not allowed this engine to cool down very much at all. And one of the things I'm noticing, or have noticed, and I'm sure someone will comment on it, is that, come on, get up in here. What's going on here? Is it maybe my tank position is a little too low? And it is possible that is a little bit low, but I don't want to change anything now. I had this up on foam like this, and I don't want to go changing any parameters now. But yes, it probably could be up a little bit higher, but for what we're doing now, we're just going to have to leave it. Okay, well, I think I've seen enough with this fuel, and I can't say that I'm super impressed with it. It seemed like the other stuff was considerably higher RPM, peak RPM, at least 500 RPM higher. So I'm just going to run this out of here real quick. And okay, so just as a final wrap up here and test, I did happen to bring another fuel tank with me, and it was one of the first ones I was using swamp juice in. It had a little bit in there. So I put a little bit more of the original version swamp juice in here. And I just want to see if this is consistent, if this one gives me higher RPM readings. I'm going to open this up a few turns since I leaned it. Higher, if it reproduces the same RPM readings as the first run with this fuel in the other tank, just to make sure that something else hasn't changed here. So let's, because this is the kind of information Garrett's going to need to know, because right now it kind of looks like Swamp Juice 2 is kind of a dud, or less potent than this, put it that way. Okay, I think that'll about do it for today's running. Okay, so that was considerably better run than what I experienced yesterday. At least I had it running on both versions of fuel. So Garrett, this conclusion is primarily for you. I'm not sure what to say. To me, it almost kind of seemed like when the engine warms up, the RPM drops down. But I also thought that at the beginning, or near the end of this last tank, the first time, that it seemed like it was holding a 9,050, we'll say, RPM pretty steadily. And then when I ran the Swamp Juice 2, it just seemed like the most I could get to a steady run was maybe 8,500. And then when I went back to this stuff, it peaked out at over 9,000, like 9,150, but then it didn't stay there. It dropped back down. So I'm not really sure what that tells me, other than maybe on the first tank when the RPM was higher, maybe it was because the tank was lower. I mean, not lower in elevation, but lower in fuel level. I don't know. It's the only thing I can think that maybe has some effect on it, because otherwise, why would? Because these are the same fuel. So I don't know what to say. I'll let you sit and watch this video 50 times or however many it takes for you to analyze it. My comment at the end of this run, Swamp Juice 2, was that it's not that much better, but now after running this again, now it's like, well, I don't really know. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with any testing you do, because, you know, I don't know. We'll see. We'll just have to keep running. I still have one of each. I don't know what more I'm going to do as far as testing with this engine, because, wow, it's still really warm. Because, well, we know how it runs now with it. I guess the only other thing I could do is just continuously keep running this engine off camera just to put time on it, and then at the end of the season, like I said I was going to do, check for, you know, excessive wear, play, bearings bad, or something like that. But other than that, I'm not really sure what we have to gain from more comparisons, unless I put the G4500 back on the stand. But we'll just take it from there. So Garrett, I'll let you kind of analyze this video and tell me your thoughts on what you want. And for everybody else, I will put a link to Garrett's website in the description. If you want more information on, if this is the first time you've watched one of these videos, just go to this Swamp Juice, a fuel alternative playlist of mine, and I start from beginning to end, and you'll see the history and understand everything about this fuel that I can explain to you and why I'm doing this. I think I do a fairly decent job of explaining that, so just watch all of those videos and then you'll kind of have a better idea, and they'll probably answer some of the questions that you're going to have with this. But anyway, that's our run for today. Runs.